My parents tried to force me to hand over my college fund to my golden child sister, the money I saved for years, so she could buy an apartment, while they expected me to sacrifice my future and be understanding like it was no big deal. My parents demanded that I give them the money I had saved for college so my sister could use it to buy an apartment. I'm 19 years old and currently a university student, and my relationship with my family has always been complicated. I've never really fit in, and for as long as I can remember, I've been treated differently from my sister. I worked hard for everything I have. I kept my grades high, earned scholarships, and worked part-time jobs whenever I could. I lived carefully, didn't waste money, and planned ahead because I knew no one was going to save me if things went wrong. I honestly believed that if I did everything right, my parents would eventually respect me. That belief turned out to be completely wrong. My older sister, Sarah, is 24 years old. She has been spoiled her entire life. She's entitled, impulsive, and used to getting whatever she wants without putting in much effort. My parents have always treated her like the golden child. She can make mistakes, fail, quit, or mess things up, and there are never real consequences. Somehow, everything always gets fixed for her. I, on the other hand, have always been expected to be the responsible one, the one who figures things out, the one who sacrifices. If something goes wrong in the family, I'm the one who's expected to adapt and give something up. That's been the pattern for years. Over time, I managed to save a large amount of money for college. It wasn't easy. Most of it came from part-time jobs, scholarships, and saying no to things other people my age were enjoying. That money means security to me. It represents my future, my independence, and my way out of being completely dependent on my family. Sarah, meanwhile, is currently unemployed and has been for quite some time. She says she's trying to figure things out, but in reality, she spends most of her time relaxing and avoiding responsibility. Despite this, she decided that she needed a new apartment, not a small or temporary place, but a nice one, in a good neighborhood, something stylish that matched the lifestyle she thinks she deserves. Of course, she has no savings, no steady income, no realistic plan to afford it. One evening, my parents sat me down and told me that Sarah had found the perfect apartment, but didn't have enough money for the deposit. At first, I thought they were just explaining the situation. Then they told me what they expected from me. They demanded that I give them all of my college savings so Sarah could secure the apartment. They didn't ask, there was no discussion. It was presented as something I was supposed to do. When I hesitated, they immediately made things clear. If I refused, they said I could pack my things and leave. They didn't hide the fact that, to them, Sarah's comfort was more important than my future. My mother said the usual line about how family comes first. My father claimed that Sarah had always been there for me, which is simply not true. They tried to guilt me, saying that if I were a good brother, I wouldn't even think twice about it. The emotional pressure was overwhelming. At first, I was so shocked that I couldn't even respond. I just sat there, trying to process what they were asking me to give up. When I finally found my voice, I asked how they could possibly think it was fair to take everything I had worked for and give it to someone who made no effort to support herself. My father shrugged and said it wasn't about fairness, it was about keeping the family together. My mother said Sarah needed the apartment more than I needed my savings. That was the moment something clicked. I realized that it didn't matter what I said. They weren't listening. They weren't interested in logic, fairness, or compromise. They only cared about Sarah. Over the next few days, I constantly went back and forth in my head. Part of me considered giving in just to avoid being kicked out. I had nowhere else to go, and the idea of being completely on my own was terrifying. I was still a student, still figuring things out, and the idea of losing my home scared me. But the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Why should I lose everything I worked for just because my sister refused to take responsibility for her own life? Why was it always my job to clean up her messes? I even thought about reaching out to distant relatives for help, but I already knew how that would go. Most of them see Sarah exactly the way my parents do: charming, misunderstood, unlucky. I would be painted as selfish and ungrateful. I felt completely trapped. No matter what I chose, I was going to lose something important. But slowly, I began to realize that giving in would only guarantee that this would never stop. If I handed over my savings now, there would always be another demand later. That was when I decided I needed to protect myself and prepare for the worst. Once I made the decision not to give in, I knew I had to be smart about it. I started quietly preparing for the possibility that my parents would actually follow through on their threat and kick me out. The first thing I did was research my legal rights. I learned that since I'm legally an adult, they couldn't just take my money without my consent, no matter how much pressure they applied. I gathered all my important documents, my birth certificate, passport, bank information, and school paperwork, and stored them somewhere safe. I also began slowly packing some of my most valuable belongings and moving them to a friend's house, just in case I had to leave suddenly. I didn't tell my parents I was doing any of this. I also reached out to my university's housing office to ask about emergency accommodations. They didn't have anything available immediately, but they gave me information about local resources and temporary housing options. It wasn't ideal, but knowing I had at least a few options helped calm me down. When I finally confronted my parents again, I stayed calm and firm. I told them clearly that I would not be giving up my college savings under any circumstances. I also told them that if they truly wanted to kick me out over this, I was prepared to leave. That did not go over well. My father exploded, accusing me of being selfish, ungrateful, and disloyal to the family. My mother started crying and said she couldn't believe I was willing to destroy the family over a little money. That was when I asked them a simple question. If it was such a small amount, why didn't they pay for Sarah themselves? Neither of them had an answer. Sarah, of course, completely lost it. She screamed about how I was ruining her life and how I didn't care about her happiness. My parents just stood there, furious, waiting for me to back down. I didn't. I told them that if they wanted me gone, I'd be out by the end of the week. The days that followed were miserable. My parents barely spoke to me, and when they did, it was only to guilt-trip me further. My mother gave me the silent treatment, while my father made sarcastic comments every chance he got. Sarah refused to even look at me, acting like I personally betrayed her. Despite the hostile environment, I continued preparing to leave. I moved the rest of my valuables to my friend's place and confirmed that I could stay there temporarily if needed. I also let a few close friends know what was happening, and they offered emotional support and even legal advice if things escalated. Then things got worse. One morning, I received a notification from my bank about a failed login attempt. Someone had tried to access my account. I knew immediately it was my parents. They had decided to try and take the money without my permission. What they didn't know was that I was already one step ahead. I had transferred the money to a new account and closed the old one. When they realized what I had done, they were furious. My father screamed at me, calling me a traitor and accusing me of tearing the family apart. My mother cried and asked how I could do this to them. I told them they had crossed a line and that I was done being their scapegoat. If they wanted me gone, I'd leave, but they were never getting my money. At that point, I realized that if I left quietly, they would twist the story however they wanted. So I decided to take control of the narrative. I posted a detailed account of everything that had happened on social media. I included how they demanded my savings, threatened to kick me out, and tried to access my bank account without my consent, including screenshots of messages and the bank alert as proof. I tagged not only my parents and Sarah, but also extended family members and family friends. The response was immediate. Most people were shocked and overwhelmingly supportive. Many criticized my parents for their behavior and expressed sympathy for me. Several relatives reached out, saying they had no idea things were that bad. A few people tried to defend my parents, but they were quickly drowned out by criticism. Not long after, I heard that Sarah's apartment plans had completely fallen apart. Apparently, once the landlord learned about the situation, he backed out. Sarah was furious and blamed me entirely. I didn't care. They had caused this themselves. The consequences for my parents were brutal. Their carefully crafted image as a perfect family was destroyed. My father's workplace relationships became tense as colleagues started seeing him differently. My mother, who cared deeply about her social standing, found herself quietly excluded from social circles. I moved in with my friend shortly after. It wasn't ideal, but it was peaceful. For the first time, I could focus on my studies without constantly worrying about what my family would demand next. Living independently was scary, but also incredibly freeing. My parents did not handle the fallout well. They bombarded my phone with calls and messages, alternating between threats and desperate pleas for me to delete the post and come home. When that didn't work, they tried to rewrite the story, claiming I had exaggerated everything and that they were just trying to help Sarah during a difficult time. No one believed them. I went completely no contact. I blocked them on every platform and even consulted a lawyer about obtaining a restraining order if the harassment continued. A few months later, things escalated again. My parents showed up unannounced at my friend's house, trying to guilt me into returning. When that failed, my father contacted my university, attempting to get information about my schedule. Thankfully, the administration was already aware of my situation and didn't give him anything. Sarah started showing up at places she knew I frequented, the library, cafes near campus, even outside some of my classes. She alternated between screaming at me and begging for money. It got so bad that I had to change my routines and ask friends to walk with me. That was the final straw. I went back to my lawyer and started the process of getting a restraining order against my parents and Sarah. The hearing was intense. They tried to paint me as a troubled, ungrateful son attacking his loving family. But I had evidence, messages, emails, bank records, and screenshots of everything. The judge saw right through them and granted the restraining order. After the hearing, Sarah tried to approach me one last time. She looked exhausted and bitter. She muttered that she hoped I was happy after ruining their lives. I didn't respond. That was the last time I saw her. Since then, I've been working part-time while continuing my studies. Balancing work and school is hard, but I'm fully independent now. My grades have improved, my stress levels are lower, and I've built a support system of people who actually respect me. Looking back, I don't regret my decision for a second. Cutting off my family was painful but necessary. The cycle of manipulation had gone on long enough. So, am I the asshole for refusing to give my parents my college savings for my sister and exposing what they tried to do to me? Because from where I stand, choosing myself for once saved my future.